Today we're going to start 86, exactly. Pavov on the top, 86A. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. Just of learning we should have this in English. Immediately.
Also thank you for coffee.
And for coffee.
And hot water. And for our friends. Hello to our friends. Hello.
That was this Modani that they sing in camp. And snowstorms that keep us home from school. Thank Hashem for everything. Okay. See, we had in the Mishnah, if a woman takes a vow that she's not going to, that her husband cannot have benefit from her. So the first opinion, the Tanna Kama says, well, the husband doesn't even need to annul that. She has no rights to make a vow like that. Rabbi Akiva said the husband should annul it because there are certain things that she would own that the husband doesn't own, and that the vow would take effect on that. It was called hadafa, those extras that her income that's beyond what the husband would be taking. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said that he should annul it because after she's divorced, he may want to remarry her, won't be allowed to because the vow would take effect then. So we said Shmuel, Pascal's like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. We thought that meant that you can be makdish a davar shlei b'olam, you can consecrate something that doesn't exist yet. It's like the vow could be prohibit things that she's not divorced yet, but according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, you would prohibit what after she's divorced. That contradicted another statement of Shmuel that says the halach is like Rabbi Yochanan Asandar. It says that you're not allowed to, or not you're not allowed to, but you can't be makdish. You're not capable of being makdish something that's like b'olam. Okay, that was the contradiction. In the end, we had Reb Huna Breder Reb Yeshua that said that she's forbidding her hands to benefit her husband, and the hands exist already. So we said if the hands exist already, that would be not something that's not in the world, that's something that is in the world. The only problem is that recreates the problem. If it exists now, then she can't take the vow now. So again, that's a future. That's something that doesn't. The vow can only take effect after she's divorced. So how is that working? How can she prohibit her hands that exist now to take effect only later? Right now, she's not divorced. Does it work like that? So this is where we start today. The Pevav on the top. Amar Rab Ila. Rab Ila says, Ma Ila v'ayma lachaveri sadazu shani meichalach likashe ekachena mimcha takdish milay kadsha. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to do comparisons. What are we going to compare this woman that's taking a vow that what she makes, what she earns, she produces should be prohibited to her husband. But right now that she's married, it can't take effect. It will only take effect after she's divorced. So what we're looking for something to compare that to and to say, well, it will or it won't. So the first Rabbi Ila says, well, let's compare it to a person that says to his friend, Ruvain owns a field and he's selling it to Shimon. He tells Shimon that I'm selling you this field. It should be hektish when I buy it back from you later. Follow? It's not being makdish it now. Being makdish it, he owns it now, but he's selling it to his friend. He's being makdish it, he's consecrating it after he buys it back. So it's going to change hands first, and then it's going to come back to him, and then the hektish should take effect. So what we say then is that it does become hektish. Since right now you have the ability to be makdish because he owns it right now, we know it's going to change hands, but the power to consecrate something right now he has. So we say that it takes effect, even though it's only taking effect later. But because he has that power now, that's good enough. Okay, now, to compare this to the woman. The woman, she doesn't have the rights now to be to be makdish something that belongs to her husband, or to forbid something that belongs to her husband. So how do we compare that it should work, that she could make this oath? The Ran explains like this. The fact is, this is how the Ran puts it, that she owns herself. It's just that as she produces, as things are earned and on the whatever she's producing, it automatically transfers over to the husband. But it's not that the husband owns her body. So too with that story with the person that owns the field. I know it's going to change hands, but right now the very basic part of this is owned by the individual Reuven that's consecrating it. So too, very basic part of her body is owned by her, and she should be able to consecrate it. Well, if it's not consecrated, she could take the vow to forbid it on the husband.
It reminded me of like the first one with the December. I think that there's certain like animals that the first one
Belongs to the Kohen. Right.
and that hasn't that's the future also.
Can you say that again, please?
The first one.
I still can't hear you.
It reminded me of the first one.
Firstborn animal, a bachar. He's saying that when it's born, it immediately belongs to the.
Yeah, but that's a Torah law, like even
Right.
before it's born.
Okay. Well, we think that this is a good comparison. At least that's Rabbi Ila's comparison. That the person that owns the field right now can be makdashit, so to the woman can take a vow to prohibit on her husband because she at least owns herself. Well, maskeflo Rabbi Yirmiyah, mi dami. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, can you compare that? Mi dami. Sadazu shani meichel achashta biyadihu, biyadihi. Isha biyad lahakdish maisi yadeha. Halei dami alalaim alachaver sadazu shemachat lachlik shekhanemem chatakdish mi kadsha. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, it's not a good comparison. The field that the person is selling to his friend, right now it belongs to him. So therefore, right now he could say, I'm consecrating it before I sell it. And say, I'm consecrating it before I sell it. I can also consecrate it after I buy it back. But this woman can't say, I'm consecrating it right now. She cannot say that. So he says this would be more comparable to, which is a problematic comparison, but he says it would be more comparable to someone tells his friend, this field that I sold to you in the past, that I've already sold to you, when I buy it back, I'm going to consecrate it. But of course, it doesn't work because it's not in his possession. He can only consecrate it if he has it. So this woman also, she's not consecrating, she's forbidding the work of her hands, but she doesn't have the work of her hands. So it shouldn't work. So how could, back to the question, Rabbi Yechidem and Nuri, how does he say that it takes effect after the divorce? She has no rights to do it. She can't do it now. It doesn't work until later.
And since she's married, like it belongs to her husband.
And since she's married, it belongs to the husband. So Maskeflo Rav Papa. Rav Papa says your comparison is good, that you're comparing it to a field that's been sold already. Mi dami, is that a good comparison? Gabi zvina psika milsayu. Field that's sold is a field that's sold. It's a done deal. He doesn't own any part of that. Gabi isha mi paska milsa, but by a woman, is it entirely, I don't know what the term for paska is. Is it a complete deal? Is it severed maybe?
Clear cut.
Is it clear cut? That's a good one. Is it clear cut? Let's say someone says, Reuven knows his friend money, owes Shimon money. So he gives him a field as a collateral. And then he says that when I redeem that collateral by paying back the debt, when I redeem that collateral, so it's going to be consecrated. So he actually still owns it. He just gave it to him as a collateral. So too, with this woman, she owns herself. She owns herself, just the husband gets everything that comes from her. So really, just like over there, the person by the collateral, Reuven would have been able to consecrate it. So here that she owns herself, she should be able to take the vow to forbid everything on her husband. Maskeflor Rav Shisha Breder Avidi, Rav Shisha Breder Avidi says, "Me dummy." Is that a good comparison? This is great. I mean, it's this back and forth, this comparing. Everyone is.
This is all trying to resolve this apparent, I guess, because within Shmuel's opinions.
Yeah, well, it's trying to resolve the problem. Yeah, the contradiction with Shmuel, and then how could it work according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? So Rav Shisha Breder Avidi says, is that what you're going to compare it to? To a field that's been given as a collateral, and that's what this woman's or basically the person still owns the field, but just it's going to end up. If it's not redeemed, it's going to end up the other person's. But right now, the other person maybe is eating the produce of or something. So too, this woman, the husband owns her produce but doesn't own her, so she should be able to take the vow that should forbid everything on her husband. So Rav Shisha Breder Avidi says, "Me dummy." Is that a good comparison? There's a problem. There's a difference here. By the field, Reuven can go over to Shimon at any time and say, "Look, I have cash. I'm going to pay you back. Give me back the collateral and redeem it." But can the woman divorce herself? She doesn't even have the rights to divorce herself, so she can never get out of that. By the field, it's more of Reuven's than the woman owns herself, right? More owned by Reuven than the woman owns herself. This would only be comparable. Someone tells his friend, this would have to be if the person said that I'm giving you this field as a collateral for 10 years. Well, so that's going to be the next. Thank you. So, what does it mean that it's comparable to? Excuse me. To what we're saying now is that within the 10 years, the person can't collect it. I'm giving it to you for 10 years. Can't collect it. Can't redeem it. After 10 years, I can get it back. I get it back after 10 years. So too, this woman, she's stuck in this marriage until the husband divorces her. Just like this guy, this Reuven, his collateral. Thank you. His collateral is stuck by this person for that time.
No, that was your note. Here, soft tissue. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So now we have this comparison with the woman with the field that's been given as a collateral for 10 years minimum. And only after that it could be redeemed. So to this woman, she can't get out of the marriage until the husband divorces her. Okay, so if that's the case, then where we're holding right now is that just like over there, by the collateral, he could consecrate it because the fact is he still owns the base of it. It's just being given to the person to hold while he owes the money. So to the woman, she owns herself, so she should be able to take the vow. Maskefla Ravashi asks a question. Me dummy, is that a good comparison? This is what Hillel said. Asam kayetz. Over there, you have a designated time when this is over. That's 10 years. Isham like kitzusa. Does the woman have a set time of how long the marriage lasts? They set up the marriage that this is a marriage that's going to last for 10 years, and after that she's going to be automatically divorced. So if that's the case, then you can't compare it to the field. The woman is more owned by the husband. At least what she produces is more owned by the husband than the man with the field that has the collateral. That man with the field is a collateral. She doesn't have the rights to get out of that. out of the marriage, and it doesn't have a termination date when it's like terminated. Ella, Amar Ravashi. Rashi says, Shani kainamis. When someone takes a vow, it's different. Kainam is the vow that prohibits, like a sacrifice. That's similar to making an animal consecrated, that it becomes not just owned by the temple, but it becomes entirely like a different entity. When you consecrate an animal, the animal turns into a sacrifice. And that's a very powerful thing. So when you say kainam, it's really saying karban, right? Kainam was a nickname for karban, and becomes like a sacrifice. Ukid Rava, like Rava says, Namarava hektish chametz v'shicher mafkin midei shibud.
Over here it says, because of its severity, a woman can forbid her handiwork to her husband by the means of konam.
Yeah. So, but we're saying that kainam has a special strength. And it works like this. Let's say someone designates his property to be collected for a debt, this certain property. But then he goes over to that property and he's makdish it, consecrates it. So the person has to collect from something else now. Let's say like a house is mortgaged, right? Means the bank will take the house but then the person is makdish his house. So then person owned the house, even though they talk about, no, I don't own it, the bank owns it. But the person actually owns it, and the person is able to consecrate it. And that consecration is so strong that it takes off the lien from the bank, takes the lien off, and the bank would have to collect from something else. They didn't put that stipulation in the mortgage. They forgot to put that in. You're not allowed to mark the shit.
Yeah, I remember this is a big deal in the laws of loans. Where this real property is meshuvad.
Right.
Somebody can go and consecrate it.
Consecrate, and then it just disappears.
Yeah.
Right. Or
That means that they can't gain benefit.
they
Wouldn't
would
even
lose
be
out.
able to
It's
live.
not and you would have to be really upset with the banks to do that, because you lose more than they lose.
Oh, thank you.
We learned earlier that when the wife takes a vow, it kind of has like built-in like the stipulation that the husband.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right.
That doesn't.
Yeah, it does apply. Because what we were saying here is that the husband doesn't even need to annul it. It's the Tanakama's view. Rabbi Kiva says no, the husband does need to annul it, because there's certain aspects of the vow that of her property that the husband doesn't own. Rabbi Manuri said no, the husband does need to annul it because it could take effect later.
But that wouldn't change these comparisons that they make.
And that's what we're discussing. We're trying to figure out what we can compare it to. Yeah, that's the big deal in everything that we study. Is it a good comparison or not? Like the Gemara says by Havdalah, it says you put Havdalah by Chayin Adas, by knowledge. It says main das Havdalah Minayin. Real understanding is to be able to make this, to distinguish, to see the differences. I mean, it's easy to do comparisons. I say, oh, this is just like, in yeshiva they say, we're in prison. Why are you in prison? Well, prison has walls and the yeshiva has walls. So yeah, I know you can do comparisons. Question is if you can do distinctions, not the right. It's the differences that how to see that how it's what's not. That's where the okay. So what we're learning here is Rava says is that because the kainam is so strong, the vow is so strong, it can uproot the debt, the lien that's on it. So let's say, for example, someone is makdish something that had a lien on it, so then the creditor has to get from somewhere else. Or let's say, person gave his whiskey or his chametz or whatever as a mashkin, as a collateral, as not a collateral, as a a place for the person to collect. If I don't pay you back, you take from this, right? You take from this this stock or whatever. Well, Pesach comes along, and all the chametz becomes aser. So then the person has to collect from something else. So chametz also, the prohibition of chametz also has that strength that takes the lien off it, and the creditor will have to collect from something else. Then there's one more thing. Let's say a person said that my servant should be the item that's going to be used to collect. My servant has a lien on it. My slave has a lien on it. It's mortgaged to the debt. And then the owner of the slave, then goes ahead and frees him. So then the creditor will have to collect from something else. So there's ways of getting out of a lien that's strong. And what we're discussing over here is how could the woman take a vow if everything that she owns belongs to the husband? Well, it doesn't actually belong to the husband. She's able to get out of it by taking this vow. And then it will take effect, even though the husband has rights to it, just like the person has rights, like the creditor has rights because of those liens. But it can undo it by taking this vow. The Gemara says, "Yihachi lama li shema yigarshena." So then it doesn't fit with the Mishnah. The Mishnah, Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, said that the vow would take effect after she's divorced. Over here, we're saying it takes effect even while she's married. Tani teach va'oid shema yigarshena. And another thing is also that maybe he'll divorce her. So there's 2 points over here. First point is that it takes effect now. And even if you want to say that it doesn't, well, when she gets divorced, it's good. Now, it didn't explain. We had a whole problem. How is it going to take effect when she's divorced? That was our whole issue. But for whatever reason, that's as a second answer, it seems to work. Okay, now we have a new Mishnah. Nadri istay v'savar shin nadri bitay.
Is there a conclusion?
Yeah, the conclusion was from Rav Ashi was that she's able to take a vow even though her husband has like a lien on it, right? Her husband has the rights to it. The kainam is so strong that it takes effect even though he has those rights.
But did it resolve this
contradiction?
within Shmuel that we spent 2 pages on?
The way we resolved that was saying that it was the hands.
It was the hands that exist now.
The
rather
hands that
than-
exist now. Okay. Here, not sure how to explain the Mishnah, like what's the scenario, but his wife took a vow, but he thought that it was his daughter that took the vow. Now he's allowed to annul his wife's vow, he's allowed to annul his daughter's vow. So he annulled it. But he just thought that it was the other person. Really, his wife took the vow. I'm never going to visit so-and-so again. Your mother again. So he says, okay, that's annulled. Mufalach. But he didn't know who it was. That said it was maybe from the other room, or they told him that someone took a vow that, well, Najabita Visavich Najishti are the opposite. His daughter took a vow and he thought that it was his wife, so he annulled it. Nadra bin Nazir Visavich Nadra Bikarban. She took a vow that she's going to be a Nazir, but he thought that she took a vow that she's going to bring a sacrifice. So he annulled it, but it was just a mistake of what it was. Nadra Bikarban Visavich Nadra bin Nazir. She took a vow that she's going to bring a sacrifice, and it turned out that she actually took a vow that she's going to be a Nazira. Nadra Mitaina Visavich Nadra Manavim. She took a vow from figs. He thought that it was from grapes. Nadra Manavim Visavich Nadra Minatainim, or the opposite. Took a vow from grapes, and he thought that it was figs. Hareza Yachzer V'Yofer. He has to go back and do it again. There was a mistake there. The Gemara says, L'meimra, is this to say the Yani Yaisa Dafkahu? That when it comes to annulling, that's very specific. Yani Yaisa actually means he restrains her, but it means he restrains her vow, which means he annuls the vow.
The first time that he annulled and the second both have to be within the 24 hours or before nighttime, sorry.
For nighttime. Yeah, in other words, the first annulling didn't work because there was a mistake on the information.
You take a vow, or you make a vow. In English, you could translate takes, take it from somewhere, or you make it. In English, we don't say I took a vow. We say I took a vow.
Here,
I vowed.
here hasn't been taken. I'm not sure. In Hebrew, what it says.
In Hebrew, it doesn't say to take. It's an English expression. Take a vow.
So in Hebrew, what is it? I vowed.
It's a
It's a
vow.
verb.
Yeah.
Well, in English, what would be the correct way of saying, aside from what these guys say? Make a vow or take a vow? Make vows. You get married. What did you do?
Don't need to answer that question.
Yeah, it says it's pretty deep.
I don't know. I don't know.
The old, I think is more common to say make. Like,
Yeah,
no,
make a vow.
but here it says,
Also by an oath, they say take an oath.
yeah, that's how it has it here.
Right.
Take a vow and
Oh, when you go to court, you say, take the vow, right? So am I taking it or am I making it? Or does it matter? Maybe it doesn't matter. Just vow.
Take a vow. Yeah, what does it mean, take a vow? Do you take the vow from somewhere? You make a vow.
or you go like that.
Yeah, do you grab it, take literally the vow, or do you make a vow?
So when you learn the Targum,
What does it say?
whenever the word kach is used by a person, kach means to take. Whenever it's used by a person, the Targum doesn't translate it as take. He says to lead, I think. He switches it. So there is a term take, but you don't actually take. Doesn't mean to actually take. It means that you lead or do something to convince the person to go. Convince. Kach in the Torah. Kach es haLevim. It means to actually take the Levium. It means to convince the Levium or something.
Oh,
Talk to them and tell them to go.
lift them up.
Yeah, that
You
wasn't.
grab it.
Okay.
That was the image.
So make would be a better translation.
I don't know the English. So is this to say that when it says Yani Isa, that it's very specific? He has to restrain her, that he has to dafkahu, that it's very specific. The problem is, Gabi Kraim, when it comes to tearing one's clothes, when to rend the clothes when someone passes away, it says Diksiv al by Shaul Melech, when that the Nar Amaleki comes and tells David that Shaul and Yonasan were killed in the battle. Diksiv al Shaul val Yonasan b'nai. It says that David tore his clothes for Shaul and Yonasan his son. And Vitanya was taught in a brisa. Over there it says al on Shaul and on Yonasan. The brisa says Amalei meis aviv v'kara v'achakach nimtza b'nai yatsi de kriya. If the person's father died, so he tore his clothes, but it turned out that it wasn't his father that had died, it was his son that had died. So he says he's yaitza. He doesn't have to tear his clothes again. It was good enough. Well, that was the tearing, even though it was a mistake for the specific individual that he tore the clothes for. The question is, how does that match up with when she takes a vow and he thinks that it's his wife, and it turns out that it's the daughter? We say that it didn't work. When it came to tearing clothes, we say that such a thing would work. Not the woodwork. Would work. Okay. Amri, they said like kasha. There's no question about this. The cases are different. In other words, we're not saying that the laws are different. We're saying that the scenario was different. Depends if they said a relative died, so he tears his clothes. So then he thought that it happened to be the father, but it turned out that it was really the child. So, but he didn't tear because it was absolute that it was the father. He knew it was a relative. That's what he thought. That was his own assumption.
Yeah, he would.
What's the Gemara's problem here? Where if you can make, you can waive off the neder without knowing the details?
Yeah.
Why? How would that be possible?
Well, he could always say that.
Imagine if you're going to say, waive off the neder that. So if he's gonna waive off and say, oh, I didn't know that's what she made. But I don't want to waive off. I thought it was a different problem. If he's not going, if you're not going to require people to be precise, then obviously it's going to be a mess. So I don't understand why they're going to surprise if you have no details.
He
Of course, he's
hears
going to say, "Oh, if I would have known she waved off grapes, I would never have.
no.
I would never have been made."
Look, he has a time limit. He's got to annul it. He heard that there's a vow.
Right.
He's got to annul it before nightfall. He can't clarify if it was about grapes or about figs. If it was his wife or if it was his daughter. He says, look, either way, I can annul it. So whatever it is, I'm annulling it. Is that good enough?
Doesn't make a difference.
So if
Because he could do it either way.
If he said either way, that's not the way the Mishnah went.
Right. The Mishnah said that he thought.
He waved off dates and then he found out it was grapes. Oh, grapes! I can't have them grapes off.
Yeah.
So I don't know why the Gemara is so surprised that he needs to know the details.
Uh-huh.
Of course you need to know. Of course you need to know what you're vowing on or what you're disavowing.
Okay. So if that's the case, what about the tearing the clothes?
Tearing the clothes it doesn't matter. You have to tear your clothes whether it's a son or a father. Either way, you have to tear your clothes. The details are not relevant.
I know, but it's not that the torn clothing is good enough. There's an act of tearing that needs to be done when someone passes away.
Right.
So he did the act and it wasn't for the specific person. So you can't answer me that,
Okay,
well,
so
the clothing are torn anyway, so now it's good
So
enough.
what's the worst case scenario? I know the shirt.
Right. No, but he doesn't have to.
I'm saying the point is, there's no halakhic ramifications if he tore the wrong shirt or he did the wrong shirt. Okay, so tear another tear.
No, but does he have an obligation to do another tear? We said no.
Thank you.
You going to tear it to show?
Whenever you go, it's the only difference. Fridays is another year.
Anyways,
So the question here is really the comparison. Why doesn't it match up? Why doesn't it compare?
that part, you can have that discussion. That's fine. I just don't understand why they were surprised that you
Okay. Okay, maybe it's the compare. Maybe it was the lememra the yoni yisadafkahu. Maybe it's just a lead up to the comparison, and now we have to figure that out. So our first answer is that it depends if it was clear, or if it was stam, unexplained. But Tanya, we even have a brisa that supports this. Here, Tanya, and I think many times in Nedarim, Tanya is a support instead of a question. Amalei Mesaviv. They told him his father died b'karav achach nimsa b'nai, and it turns out it wasn't his father, it was his son. So lo yatsi yedei kriya. He did not fulfill the kriya. Amalei Meslei Mes. They told him that someone died, a relative. He thought it was his father, so he tore. But it turned out that he was wrong. He is yaitza. Very clear that when it comes to tearing clothes for someone that passed away, it's very clear that there's a difference between if it was specified who it was or if it was unspecified who it was. Okay. So that's a good answer. Ravashi says, "Kan b'teichadei dibur, kan lachikadei dibur." There's a difference between if it's teichadei dibur. Teichadei dibur is, when you buy something and they say you have 30 minutes to cancel or something. So when someone makes a statement, or sometimes in davening, if he says the wrong blessing, if he immediately corrects it during the amount of time that it says that's like the few seconds. It's called Kadei Shila Shalom, amount of time to ask. Shalom Alecha Rabbi Umari, peace unto you, Master. So if it's within that time frame, then you're able to retract and take it back.
This like general annulling, it reminds me like before the woman is get married, then she go like
And what we learned was that before someone gets married, the Talmud Chacham would annul his daughter's vows because that would be his last chance to annul them.
The statement would be like a general statement, like, not, no,
Yeah,
that's a finding well.
I guess so. I think although we said that he would act, that statement would be that he would ask her if she has vows. That would just be a way of figuring out what the vows are. Remember, we had to say that it wasn't really just a general annulment. He had to actually hear the vow. Remember, we said he has to actually hear the vow.
And for Yom Kippur, don't we say like,
Yeah.
do like a general statement also for the
Yeah.
vows?
Yeah, so that's a good point. You do a general annulment of vows before Yom Kippur.
Not before marriage.
Yeah, and Thursday. You don't specify the vow.
Yeah, but we
You
say
might do
that.
that.
Future vows.
Also future.
Oh, also both. has to-
Yeah.
But in that terms, I don't say, I know I'm supposed to list them all out, but
Too
there's too
many.
many of them, so
Right.
let's just get this over with, because you guys don't want to sit around and listen to my speech.
So, when do we?
That's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Because first, the Nedarim, you're trying to get out of the vow you made. You can't be made for your own Nedarim.
Uh-huh.
You need the Rabbanim to be made for your own Nedarim.
Right. Nevertheless, they're still annulling vows that they don't know. Unspecified, they're annulling vows. I mean, you know them, but the Rav doesn't know them. The husband doesn't know it either, you know. Okay, so what we're saying over here is that when he tears the clothes because he thought his father passed away, and it turns out that it was his son, it was Teich Kedei Dibar of the tearing that he finds out that it's his son. But Tanya, we even have a brisa that says this: someone that has someone ill in his house, the person fainted, thought the person died. The kara, they tore the clothes. After he tore the clothes, then the person actually died. That wasn't a good tearing because the person was alive when he tore it. Reb Shimon ben Pazi, Reb Yeshua ben Levi, Shimon bar Kapara, Leishanu al Shemeis Lach Kedei Dibar. But Reb Shimon ben Pazi says in the name of Reb Yeshua ben Levi that that's only if the person died after Teich Kedei Dibar, after the amount of time that what your person can retract. But if the person died Teich Kedei Dibar of the tearing, Kedibur Dami. What the base over here is. Okay, he doesn't have to tear again. There are 4 exceptions to Teich Kedei Dibar. If someone curses God, so he can't retract within Teich Kedei Dibar. If someone pronounces something to be an idol, to be his God, says he points to something, he says, this is my God. You can't then
Kedei Dibar is the time
time
you
to-
make a blessing.
yeah, that you're able to switch it if you made a mistake. He's not able to retract then. And also if someone marries a woman, gives her a ring, says, you're married to me, and then within the Teich Kedei Dibar, he says, oh boy, that was a mistake. That doesn't work either. And the same with divorcing her. You can't Teich Kedei Dibar retract from the divorce. So these are things that are so the way the Ran explains it is that when a person does something, he still,
I don't know.
unless it's a very intense thing, he still is considering it while he's doing it. So he has a Teich Kedei Dibar it's like the chess, when you're playing chess, you take your finger off you. So you're still thinking about it as you're moving it, right? So when a person is doing something, he's still considering it. So he does have a Teich Kedei Dibar to retract. But if it's something that's very, very serious, like marriage or idolatry, so then there's no going back. That you had to think about beforehand. Okay, let's leave it over here. That should be good.
Will we be here Sunday?
I'll be at Sunday, Bezos Hashem.
Are we supposed to